Hey guys, I am joined by Jason Mozey. This guy is a Marine. He is the reason why I got into Spartan races. He is a total badass. It's such a complex thing to try to describe you, Jason, and I mean that in a positive way because you represent so many things and attributes and just things that just drive me. The latest of which being what you just finished and did last week, which was the death race. But before we get into that, do you want to tell your backstory in case there's somebody watching this that doesn't know what got you into OCR racing?
Yeah. So, kind of a brief overview of it. So, as Todd said, I was in the Marine Corps, served from 2003 to 2007. During my time in the Marines, did 3 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 1 to Okinawa, Japan. During my first time to Iraq, it was a huge shitstorm, fighting a lot, saw a lot of screwed up things. When I came back from that deployment, I brought a lot of that garbage back with me. Was in a really, really dark space. Tried to get through it with the pills that were given to me, and then alcohol as well. And then one night I said to hell with it all and actually attempted to commit suicide. Obviously didn't work out for the better. But after that, into psych ward, saw a bunch of psychiatrists, and kind of still led my life, just kind of drowning everything out through alcohol. And then it wasn't until 2013 when a buddy of mine had said, "Hey, why don't you come try this OCR race with me?" Called Tough Mudder. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Went there, and it just completely changed everything for me. Um, you know, between the camaraderie that I found in OCRs and the fitness, and then combine it with like the Sean T workouts, the insanity and everything like that, and just that drive and that push and continuously finding that new limit is just brought me to a much better space where I don't drink hard liquor anymore. I enjoy the crap out of microbrews. Like after a race, I'll have like a beer or two, but like not drinking pretty much at all besides that. And fitness and racing has just become like my drug now.
Dude, and it's like, so there's so many, like, you're, when I say you're the reason why we got into Spartan races is because when you contacted us last year and you want us to do the sprint and Concord, knowing why you race and knowing what you race for, which is the guys that you lost and their memory and the things that you dedicate to this sport, I was like, how can I say no to that? Like, I would just be an ass. Like, I would never live that down in my head. So, like, I'm so glad that happened. And then, so I started reading the book Spartan Up that Joe DeCina wrote, the guy that created Spartan. And I read about the death race, the creation of the death race, how he came about it. Like, I know a guy that's done 3 death races. And I just remember when you came to me and you said, they're bringing the death race back and I'm going to do it. I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be amazing to watch. So for those that don't know what the death race is, like somebody might know what a hurricane heat or the Agoge or whatever it is, but can you explain to them before we get into it what the death race is?
It's a very, very hard thing to explain, but basically what a death race is that there is no start, there is no end. You don't know when it starts, you don't know when it ends, and it's something that's going to push you to a limit that you didn't even know existed, and then go further than that. You're going to do the craziest crap that you've ever thought of, that you would never even think of doing, and then you're going to put your body through it, and have to make just in sometimes unconscious decision of whether you're going to keep going forward or not. And that's really the best way of explaining it until we get into a little bit further with some of the things that I went through on this race, and you'll kind of understand from there.
So, all right, so let's start with what happened. Let's start with you show up and just kind of walk us through from the time that you started until the time that you tapped out on the bear crawl, and then we can get into why you decide not to keep going, which is a whole nother amazing story, and what happened with that. So go ahead.
So, we can start it at the registration, but honestly, it starts well before the registration when I signed up for it. When I signed up for it, I also had to submit a video of why I thought that I should actually be let into this race. So did that, and was accepted in the race, and kind of
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm curious. I didn't know about this. What did you say on the video as to why you thought you should be put in? I'm curious.
because I was at the point where I had pushed as many limits as I thought possible. And, with the story that I had told about my story, of why I got started with ours, it was always that thing where it was like, oh my God, like I can never do a Tough Mudder because it's 10 miles. I'm going to have to push myself to X, Y, and Z. I can never do a trifecta because I'm going to have to push throughout, so on and so forth, or an ultra. And it was always that drive. And then once I finished all of that, it's not like it was not challenging anymore, but I really wanted to take something that was like beyond the realm of possibility and say, if my brothers can go through this, then I'm going to go through this for them. Or I'm going to find my limit, and then I'm going to push that even that much further. So that was the thing I put in that video of saying that, listen, I'm at the point now that 2018 is my endurance year. And it's looking like, we'll get into it a little more, but it's looking like 2019 maybe even crazier after like just this life-changing experience called the death race. But that was the big thing for me, was that, with everything I have coming up this year with races, this needed to happen. And it couldn't have come at a better time. And like just the mindset it put me in was, I can't explain it right now. Well, we'll get into it.
Yeah, so keep going. I didn't mean to stop you, but I was
No.
curious.
So then after the signing up for it and so on and so forth, every now and again there would be like little things that would be let out from Peak. Like, all right, the race director would send out a video, and he's walking barefoot through the snow and saying that make sure you do your homework, know what a death race is about, and you don't step foot on this race on his course without an axe, a $5 bill, and a 5-gallon bucket. And so all of a sudden your head starts racing, like, all right, you see this crazy motherfucker walking barefoot through snow with an axe and a 5-gallon bucket. What the hell did I just get myself into? And so on and so forth. You get little things dropped like that. So 7 days before the race, we got the mandatory gear list. And the mandatory gear list isn't like your typical gear list I get if you are aware of some of these events, but like it said that one of the things was that going off your body weight. So if, like, for me, between 145 to 175 pounds, I had to have a sandbag that weighed 45 pounds, and it needed to be sand. It's called a sandbag. It needed to be sand. So they would weigh it. They would check to make sure it's sand, and you had to make sure that 45 pounds at the start of the race and 45 pounds at the end of the race, or else you get DNF'd. Other things on there was waterproof headlamp, a bottle of Dramamine, a Adams size 18 dry fly for fly fishing, pruning shears, safety goggles, the axe, the 5-gallon bucket, $100, and a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head. And then whatever else you wanted to bring, like, because this was a self-sustained race. So you're going to go in the woods and you're going to stay there unknown amount of time. So all your water, all your food, everything like that, you have to bring with you. If you want more water, you're going to have to use the water that's in the river on the property. So water purification tablets, life straw, like any type of survival type things like that, you need to bring with you as well. um, change of clothes, socks. Make like the one thing I learned in the military was always take care of your feet. Your feet will make or break you. So Gold Bond, 6 pairs of socks, dry pants, dry shirt, and even though it's the middle of the summer, there was down to 40 degrees, like 5 degrees. So you have to take that into account as well and say, all right, am I going to need cold weather gear, or am I going to need some type of like, I'm going to hot and cold and everything like that. So get the pack and get everything in there. How am I going to carry my sandbag? All of these things. And then part of it too was that you had to write down your mandatory gear list and everything that you brought that was on the non-mandatory gear list. So then you get this all done, you laminate everything, and let's see, the day before the race, they send out another email with an updated gear list. Now it's all changed. So you got to go back through. You have to add things. You have to take out things. You have to rewrite your cards, and make sure your pack is fitting good. So when I got done with everything, my pack was somewhere probably in the ballpark with the sandbag of anywhere between 80, well, like I would say probably about 80 to 95 pounds. And strapped up and took off. And, we were given an address of where to register, and drove there. And we got there, and I got there, and they park over there. Park your car, take your keys, take everything that you're bringing on the race with you. Don't talk to a person on your way over here. And just meet at the entrance here and sign in. So parked the truck, got all my gear, sent my wife Amber a text saying that I'll see you when I see you, shut the phone off, and away I went. Got into registration, got my bib, and they were like, all right, here's your bib. Gave them the money that we brought, which actually went to a really awesome cause for a local family, for an accident they had gotten into. So that was really, really cool. But so gave them the money, and they said, all right, now take your gear, go outside and start splitting wood. So I go right outside and drop my pack and go over, and we split a wood, and we were just filling up trailers with wood. After everyone got registered and we were done splitting the wood, we went back into it was actually like the small little church, kind of ironic, death race in a church. Anyways, so we go into the church, and then the race director says a few things, Joe says a few things, medical says a few things, and then they're like, all right, midnight, we're rolling out. So then we go back outside, and the first thing we do is we had to grab our axes, and we had to hold them up shoulder length or shoulder height. And the first 10 people to drop them had to go see, which is never a good thing. Never want to.
So your audio cut out a little bit. The first 10 people that dropped their axe or their arms fell down had to do what?
Had to go see Joe.
Okay.
And you don't want to see Joe. You never want to see Joe at this. So luckily I was not one of those first 10. And so what those first 10 had to do was that, so we were starting our hike over to the farm, which was probably around a 25 to 30 mile hike over a trail called Blood Route, which anybody who's been to Joe's farm knows Blood Route very well. But it's like there's a portion of it when you're going over Blood Route, it's 4 miles of about 3,000 foot elevation gain. So we had all of our pack, and the first 10 people had to go to what they called the Ark. And the Ark had 2 generators on it, which powered a digital clock that the rest of us were carrying. And it had 14 hours on it. And we had 14 hours to get from there over to the farm. And this was from midnight, so that would be from midnight till 2 in the afternoon. So we just picked everything up and we started hiking. And when we got to the base Blood Route, it had taken so much time that they had taken the digital clock and the generators away, and now it was just time. We were just hiking up over Blood Route. So we start the hike up to Bloodroot, and during the hike, I think about 6 people dropped right off the chute right from that hike. We get to the top of Bloodroot, and we take a break for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. And then we had to get all of our packs on, and then we had to bear crawl down Bloodroot the other side.
And that was what, 4 miles?
Yeah,
Was that
so
another
4 miles
4?
on the other side. Yep. So then we bear crawl down, and then we get to a bridge, and they told, and this is where the death race starts to do like mind game type things, and you have to think of it very literal when they tell you a task. So they pointed to a rock and they said, this river we need to have 6 inches of water on this rock. And we said, well, how the hell do we do that? And they said, well, why don't you make a human dam? So then we all start sitting down in this river and like shoulder to shoulder, like as tight as we can, trying to make a human dam to get the water to rise to 6 inches above this rock. And so we're sitting there and the water's probably like 55 degrees, freezing our what's off. And it gets to the point where it dawns on somebody to take out their Camelback and just set it on the rock and put 6 inches of water above the rock. Complete. So, and then we all get out, we grab our gear and everything, and we continue to hike. And then we come to this other portion of the trail, and they said, all right, now everybody low crawl down through the river. So what we had to do with our packs on was belly crawl in the river going down the river. So now to cross the river, actually go down the river, belly crawling, which was terrible because you have the rocks and you're going on the water, and then all of a sudden you hit a deep spot and you've got 100-pound or like 90-pound pack and you go like that. Now your pack brings you over into the water. All your shit's wet. So everyone's off, you're cold and everything. So once we got out of that, then we got back on the trail and they told us, all right, everyone take off your shoes and socks. We're doing barefoot hiking.
Barefoot hiking?
Yep. So then we continued on a mile or two with our packs and everything, barefoot hiking down the trail a little bit further. After that, we put our shoes and socks back on, and then we continued on the rest of the way to the farm. And then we got to the farm, and we dropped our packs. We had to get our sandbags out. We got our sandbags, and then we run over to a pond that's on Joe's property. And this pond is, I don't know how the hell he does it, but it was like 92 degrees out, and the pond was probably like fucking 49 degrees, freezing cold. So we all had to get our sandbags. And then Joe comes over and he makes us all get into the middle of the pond, and we have to drop our sandbags into the middle of the pond. And then we have to go under to make sure we all get submerged in water, and then we come out and we sit down, and he talks a little bit more and saying how we're going to go get these sandbags in 70 hours. And he doesn't really think that we know where we put our sandbags. So why don't we all just get back in and get our sandbags? So then back into the water we went. We all had to get under, find our sandbags, bring them out and sit back down. And that took too long for him. So we had to go and put them back in the pond and then come out and go back to our packs. So we run back to our packs, and our packs are gone. And what they had done was they took all of our packs and they threw them in the river that's on his property. So then we had to go into the river and get all of our packs and come back out with them. So once we got all that squared away, he had 2 rocks, boulders on his property. And they probably weighed anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds each. And what we had to do, he wanted them to go like this, basically flip-flop them. And so we had to figure out how to move them without damaging his grass. So that was kind of a cool concept, though. Like, it seems like he's fucking with you, and he is, but in the same sense, it's like you are using like this team, the team that you have around you, and any tools you can find possible to actually do this. And guess what? We did it. Like, something so crazy like that, 3 and 4,000 pound boulders. We, as like, what was it, 20 of us, took them and flip flopped them and dropped them.
So
And of course,
I'm curious, I was going to ask you, how did y'all get it up and do it without damaging the grass?
so the grass did get a little damaged, which I'll tell you the repercussions of that in a little bit. But what we did was we went into the woods and we got logs, and we basically made rollers off of these logs, and we found some iron pipes in his barn. And so we shimmed up the boulders, got them onto the logs, and then used them as rollers, and then pushed them to the other side. And some people brought rope, so we used rope to pull it as well. And, kind of just with a little engineering, little ingenuity, we were able to do it. But the thing about it is that at that point, you're talking, I mean, the event was probably going for what, like 15 hours by then. But the thing is that when you think about an event that starts at 10 o'clock at night, you didn't sleep the day before because you're too nervous or whatever the case may be. So a lot of us hadn't slept in at least 24 hours at that point. So your mental clarity isn't all there. You're just kind of looking at this big rock and you're like, how the fuck am I going to do this? Until like you kind of just figure it out. And there is a lot of yelling and screaming and laughing and everything. Like, a lot of different human emotions come out in this race. And so we did, flip flop the rocks, and we got it going. And, that was a feat in itself. So then after we got that all squared away, we got our packs, and then we went over and kind of got a glimpse of the barbed wire crawl, which I'll get to. But we had to go through it once that first day. They just said they're probably just killing time, but they said, all right, now go low crawl through the barbed wire and do this loop. And so we did that. And then after we got that done, we got all of our gear on. And then Joe was like, all right, follow me. Fuck. That's all we could think about. Like, when Joe goes, he freaking goes. And so he's running up the hill. And so we're running up behind him. And then we get to this area that has this little cabin on it. And what we had to do was we had to go, and with our 5-gallon buckets, he wanted us to fill them up with rocks that we found. And we had to fill them up to the brim. And me and someone else, he had go find bigger rocks to leave in the trail so that we can go get them later on to put by the cabin for God only knows why. So we filled up the 5-gallon buckets with all the rocks up to the brim. And it's like where the concept of the bucket carry from Spartans came from. But the biggest difference is that this race isn't sponsored by Reebok. So granted, they do keep safety in mind, but not all that much. So it's like, fill this 5-gallon bucket to the brim with rocks. And then we had to go up the hill, about 5 or 10 miles up. And then it was the first 25 of us that came. He was like, all right, you guys go over there and you got a task over there. And he took the other 25 sorry fucks up to the top of the hill to screw with them some more. So we went over, and there was this bridge that was made out of, trees that was used on the trails that Peak uses for like the Peak Ultra and all the other stuff that they do up there. But the wood was all rotted to shit and everything like that. So what we had to do was we had to take these 2 logs, which were probably, 20, 30 feet in length across this ravine. we had to take them down, and we had to cut down 2 new trees and cut them to length with our axes and then pull them across the ravine, which was another cool, like, team building type scenario because you're cutting stuff down. Oh, and I forgot to bring this up in the beginning. The funniest shit I've ever seen in my life and the most terrifying are people that have never swung an axe before in my life, like in their life. That is the funniest yet scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. Whereas I saw people like two-hand an axe and have more on the backswing like this than they did coming down, not looking back, and all this other crazy shit. Like, I thought they were going to fucking kill somebody. So if you ever want to do a death race, please, for the love of God, practice swinging an axe before you even go. Anyways, so we had to cut down the 2 trees, and they were decent sized trees. And we got the bridge done, and then they told us that, all right, so at the rest of the event tonight, you're going to be up at the top of the mountain by Shrek's cabin, which is a cabin up at the top of Joe's property, and there's no water up there. So if you guys want water, you got to fill up your 5-gallon buckets with water down in the river and then bring them up with you when we're going up right now. So then we filled up our buckets with water, and then we hiked up the rest of the way with the 5-gallon buckets of water to the cabin. When we get up to the cabin, the other crew was already there, and we're clearing out like about a half a football field's worth around this cabin of saplings and raspberry bushes and all this stuff with pruning shears that they had us bring on the gear list. And so we're doing all that, and they're like, Joe had gone back down for God knows what, and they were like, all right, Joe's going to be here in a half hour, and all this shit better be done. So, we get done with everything we can in the time we were given, got it all cleared out, and then Joe shows up. And so by this time, I forget what time it was at this point, but, we're all pretty beat and bloody and bruised and everything. And Joe says, all right, so you guys didn't clear out the amount that I wanted you to in the time allotted. You guys ruined my grass when you moved the rocks. So how does 3,000 burpees sound? And we were just like, all right. And he's like, anyone that doesn't get 3,000 burpees, you're out. He's like, we leave here at 6:45 tomorrow morning. You need to have your 3,000 burpees done by then.
So you had like, what was it, 12 hours?
12 hours.
To do 3,000. And you did, I remember talking to you on Friday, you kind of told me, I thought it was pretty ingenious how you and your group came up with a strategy for how to get them done. What was it?
So what we did was we broke it up into 20 and then 10-second break, 20, 20-second break, 10, 2-minute break. And what that did was it really helped. Like, you're not thinking about 3,000. You're thinking about 20. You're thinking about 20. You're thinking about 10. And then refuel, drink your water, get back to it. Think about 20, 20, 10. Never think about 3,000. And that night, there was 20 people that dropped just because they could not grasp the concept of 3,000. Like, it just wasn't in the realm of possibility in their head. They weren't thinking about the 20-20-10. They were thinking about the fact of, like, all right, we are at 500. Holy crap, we have 2,500 to go. Or we get to 1,000. And then we have 2,000 to go. So in my mind, there was 2 things going through my mind at this time. Every person that dropped, I just looked at it as, I'm stronger than them. Like, that was like kind of another positive thing that I was utilizing. Seeing somebody drop, somebody that looked stronger than me, that looked like they could do 3,000 burpees, say fuck this and walk away. I was like, I got your card, motherfucker. Like, I got you. So the other thing with that was that, like, the people around me and, like, the group of people, there was a woman there. Like, this woman is beyond amazing. She's an adaptive athlete with one leg. She's done multiple 100-mile ultra marathons, and she was banging out these burpees like they were just nobody's business. Like, she was going after it. And I was like, if she's doing this, I got no fucking excuse at
How
all.
old was she? How old was she?
Oh, she was in her 50s.
I saw a picture of her. I was going to ask you about her. Blonde?
Yeah, well, grayish, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw her on the social media post that Peak Races was putting up, and I'm glad you mentioned her because I was going to bring her up, and I'll circle back to that, but I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. So, you know, the burpees, it just destroyed people, and just the mindset of saying that, you know, how could anybody do 3,000 burpees? And it was kind of the thing that we always preach, and this was the thing that this was the eye-opening experience, like, at that moment in this race, to really say, when I said I wanted to find my limit and push past it, that was it. I mean, that was the point where somebody comes to you and says, do 3,000 burpees. And your first knee-jerk reaction is to tell them to get fucked, because there's no way that that's happening. But instead of doing that, why don't you just do it? See? And so the other thing that I put in my mind was that I wasn't thinking, even though we were counting off like the 2020-10, I wasn't looking at, okay, we're at 1,000, we have 2,000 more, or 2,000, we have 1,000 more. I was looking at time and saying that, all right, I know goddamn that we're going to be doing this, so we have to leave at 6:45 tomorrow morning. So what time is it? Oh, it's midnight. All right, we have 6 hours and 45 minutes left of burpees. Or, you know, it's 2 a.m. We got 4 hours and 45 minutes left. And you just go off that time. So don't look at the number. The number doesn't mean anything.
So did it take you guys the entire 12 hours to get to 3,000, or did you finish a little before the deadline?
No, I mean, we finished at like 6 a.m, I think. And it was already there. And we were kind of like, once we hit it, we just grabbed our gear, and he was like, all right, grab your gear and get in line. We're going back down. So we got it done. We didn't have any rest or anything.
So what's your body feeling like at this point after that?
At that point, numb, completely numb. Like, I didn't feel really much of anything at that point. Like, it was at that point that, like, when we had the 10-second breaks, I literally would just fall asleep. Like, couldn't control it, just fell asleep. And it was kind of happening to everybody. And so when we would start the burpees, if you looked at the person that was next to you wasn't getting up to do a burpee, you knew they were asleep, and you gave them a nudge and said, all right, wake up, buddy, let's go. And that's kind of what we were doing, because it was literally like we would do the 20. And then what we did to kind of ease up on our shoulders was we would do the 20, and then we would go down to start the next one. But that's where we rested for the 10 seconds. So we can drop kind of our arms and loosen up our shoulders. But when I did that and my head just hit the ground, I was out cold, like just solid cold sleep. And so, you know, my shoulders were completely shot from carrying that pack. You know, at that point, God only knows, about like 70 miles probably. I mean, my shoulders just felt like they were going to tear out of their sockets. And then doing 3,000 burpees on top of it was beyond painful. After that, the next morning came, and we got our packs, and we, you know, Joe brought us down to the, where did we go again? Christ. Oh, we went back down to the pond. And so what we had to do at the pond was that we had to take those fly fishing dry flies that we brought, and they said that we had 30 minutes to catch a fish with the lure and put it in the race director's hand, or else we were getting our packs on and going for a swim. So some people did fish line and started to try to fish, so forth. Time starts ticking away, and going back to what I said with like the take things as literal as what they tell you. So what one person ended up doing, this was ingenious. I never would have thought of this, especially tired and everything. But they took her dry and she had a packet of tuna fish that she had brought. She had hooked the dry fly through the package of tuna fish, which is fish, and brought it to him and put it in his hands.
Now, how long were y'all out there trying to fish before she thought of that?
We had about 20 seconds left on the clock.
Dude, that's crazy. So then from there, was it the barbed wire crawl?
So then from there, we got our stuff and we went back. And then they had us all go underneath the barbed wire, and it was time for the barbed wire crawl. And that, I mean, when we were at the starting line and we're on our stomachs, and I fell asleep again. Like, I just passed out. I had my head like this, and I just passed out again. Someone had woken me up, and they said, all right, now let's go. And so then we started going around the circle. And so this was what they did, was they built a track, an actual, like, scaled, a normal size track, the normal running tracks are. And it was filled with rock, gravel, and all that shit, and had barbed wire about 2 feet, I think. It was 1.5 feet or 2 feet off the ground all the way around. And they were doing a world record for the longest barbed wire crawl. And so they had told us in the beginning that it was going to be 26.2 miles, a marathon. And we kind of believed them because we just did 3,000 burpees. That was, that was against the realm of possibility in Joe's mind. But so we started to do the crawl. After I got done with the third lap, my knees were so swollen and everything was like deteriorating so bad on my body. I had to make a conscious, while I still kind of had my mind intact, I had to really make a conscious decision about something. And what that was that I had to look at the two things. The reason I was running this race and a reason why I'm running a race coming up this year called the Vermont 50. So the reason I'm running the death race is for me. The reason why I'm running the Vermont 50 is for a nonprofit called Vermont Adaptive, which helps adaptive athletes and veterans who come back who've lost a limb, lost an arm, whatever the case may be, and trains them of how to actually do sports. So I've raised to date $950 for the Vermont Adaptive. If I continued on with the death race, I would have possibly not been able to do that race. So I would have raised all this money, done all this stuff for this great organization, and then felt like I wouldn't have been able to come through for them. And so I thought about it, and I was like, I think I got one more lap in me. So I did another lap of the barbed wire crawl. And
so how many laps did you end up doing? How many laps did you do? Four?
Yeah.
It was a 1/4 mile track, right?
Yeah.
So that was basically a 2 mile bear crawl.
Yeah.
Or barbed wire. Okay. Damn. After all the other shit.
Yep. So after I got done with that, I went up to the race director and I was like, I'm out. I'm calling it. And he was like, what? No, you can't. You have to go back and do it. You have to do this, that, and the third. And I told him, I was like, listen, I told him the story I just told you. And he's like, you know what? This is about, coming back to fight another day. I totally get it. Totally respect it. Let me, give me your bib. Gave him my bib. And that was that for me. But, so after you get done with the race, whether you're medically discharged, DNF, whatever the case may be, you have to go to medical. They check you out, and then you have to wait there for 6 hours. So while I'm waiting there, I go over and I'm watching everybody else do the barbed wire crawl. And Joe comes up to me and starts giving me shit because it's Joe. And I told him, I was like, listen, I DNF'd for
Well, no, tell him what he asked you, because you like didn't he come up to you and say, "Why did you give up on yourself?"
Yeah, because he came up to me because me and him talked earlier, and I told him how I was from, this part of Vermont and in the middle of nowhere type deal. And so he came up and he's like, I thought you said you were hard and from like middle of nowhere Vermont. Why'd you give up on yourself? And I said, I didn't give up on myself, not at all. I just had to make a conscious decision to decide that this race is not as important as the Vermont 50, which I'm running for Vermont Adaptive. And I said, I had to make the decision whether to DNF your race, and that meant nothing to anybody but myself, or DNF the other race that means so much more to an adaptive athlete that may be waiting for a prosthetic leg or something like that. And he said, you know what? I can respect the hell out of that.
And that is what I mean for Joe, the Joe of Spartan, to say that to you, dude. Like I said to you on Friday, you should. I mean, there's no reason, which I know you did, walk away with your head held high. And there's no like. I was so glad that you were happy with what you did, and that you walked away with your head high. And that, I mean, that's a moment that you'll never forget. Joe telling you that, like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And it's not like the thing about it is like, sure, like, did I not get the skull? No, I didn't get the skull. But guess what? There'll be another death race. There'll be another one next year. There'll be another one the year after. And if there's not, then there'll be something else. Like races, at the end of the day, a race is a race. Like it's not the end of the world if you DNF. And what you have to be happy with is you have to know that you put forth everything that you had into that race. And what did you take away from it? Like what I took away from this race is like, I can't even kind of explain it at the fact. I mean, fuck, 3,000 burpees. Sometimes I still can't wrap my fucking head around that. And at that point, not sleeping for like 36 hours and you still are banging out 3,000 burpees. And there are, times in our lives where we sit here and we're like, man, I don't want to do that because it's going to suck and I don't think I have it in me. And then you go and do that and you're like, if I can do that, what more can I do? Like it just kind of puts things into the perspective of saying that, we set our own barriers. We set a barrier by saying that that's impossible, but we only think it's impossible because we've never tried it. And until you have tried it, then you can never say it's impossible. And if for some reason you don't do it right at that time, doesn't mean it's impossible. Did I lose you? Oh, there you are. It just means that you have to go back and keep trying, keep going, keep moving, keep going forward at it.
Yeah, it's so it was funny because like I always believe that like I always believe that people come into your life for a reason, and I think there was a reason why you came into my life when you did, and I think there's a reason why I just spent the weekend with a buddy of mine who you're going to meet when we do the Ultra in Spartanburg. He's a former Green Beret, and much like you, he's a badass, and like you, and I'm telling you, the two of you are going to be like two peas in a pod. Like you're going to love each other. But like when I'm around you, and then Priscilla, who's a friend of Sean's, she's a dancer and she's done a lot for him with the babies and stuff. She's fighting stage 3 cancer at the same, like, so like in the last 2 weeks, I've watched you do the death race. I'm watching Priscilla fight stage 3 cancer. And it just really puts shit in perspective about how much bitching and moaning we do about the small, simple things, like you said, that we get so caught up on the bullshit and the small stuff. And so what was funny was right before you started the race, Alicia and I went and ran like 6 miles on a mountain, just trying to get ready for Asheville, which is in like 2.5 weeks. And we wanted to get some mountain training in. And it was hot as fuck. It was humid as fuck. And we were like, we got in the truck and I was like, that was miserable. I fucking hated it. And then literally 12 hours later, I'm watching you in the death race and I'm watching the 3,000 burpees and I'm sitting there going, yeah, the other day I looked at Alicia and I'm like, remember the other day we were bitching about Crowder's Mountain? I'm like, yeah, that wasn't really that bad. And so what it did, and I want to tell you this, and this is God's honest truth. What it did is it motivates me when I see you do this kind of shit, and I see other people do the stuff that they do. Is that, and it's funny because my buddy Steve, who you'll meet, he one of his best friends that was in the Army races with a prosthetic leg. So it's kind of funny how, like, you know, your charity is working with vets that are doing that kind of stuff, and this guy does all kinds of shit with a prosthetic leg. He literally just sent me a picture tonight of the Fayetteville Super that we were at, and he was, you know, they were on Twister, and I saw the picture of him, and it was kind of cool. But it's like when I see guys like you and guys like them, it's like it makes me want to push past my boundaries. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes me want to go harder in my workouts and go harder in my training. And like, you know, Sean always says, you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, to find out what you're made of. And like, when I look at what you just did, that is the ultimate definition of getting fucking uncomfortable. Like, I don't think it could get much more uncomfortable unless it was something that you had no control over, like, God forbid, like a disease like cancer or something like that you can't control. But like, to put yourself physically in that situation and test yourself, the amount of resolve that you have to be building up for when shit comes at you that you can't control, to me, is like amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
And the biggest thing, I mean, Sean says it in one of the workouts, you know, that, you know, what are you going to do when your body's breaking down? What are you going to do? I mean, when you're at so long into this event and you haven't slept, you've just hiked an ungodly amount, you're literally 3,000 burpees, you're burning like more calories than you can consume in a day, and you're doing it in an 8-hour period or whatever the case may be. Like, what are you going to do? Your body is broken, it's beaten. And then at the end of it, then Joe comes to you and says, now the race starts. Like, what mind fuck is that? Whereas your body's broken, you are tired, you are just like, you're like, man, this race can't get any worse. And then he says, now it starts. Like, you have to kind of you have to go into a very dark place into your own head and find whatever is going to drive you to get you to take that next step.
So there's two things I want to ask you. One, I'll start off with the one I think will be easier to answer. What did you guys, like, what do you do when you got to go to the bathroom on a situation like this? Like, do you just piss your pants? Do you shit your pants? Like, what do you do? Or do you just, like, I think you even told me the other day, like, you just not use the bathroom for 4 days because your body's just not, it's just using everything it can, or what?
You take a piss when you can take a piss, whether it's on yourself, whether it's run off real quick and take a piss. And I mean, I think a few people took a shit, but I didn't. Like, my body just wouldn't. And so you talk about being uncomfortable, go 4 days without taking a shit and do 3,000 burpees. Yeah, bring a new freaking thing of uncomfortable for you. So it's just another thing that you have to overcome. Like, there was no set time where they were like, okay, pull out your food and eat. Like, there was none of that. It's you eat on the move. You eat when you can. You rip open something real quick and you consume it. And it's, I mean, I know everybody has their ways of eating and thoughts of eating and everything like that. But I'll tell you right now, that shit goes out the window and you're eating whatever you can get your freaking hands on.
Do you think your military background helped you with this race? The survival part of it?
Yeah, it helped me prepare for it. It helped me, like, get my pack ready. There were things about the field that I was able to kind of go back to what I did in the field in the military and correlate it to this, whether it was like eating, whether it was hiking, because we used to do, 20, 25-mile hikes with a full ruck and a 50 cal on our backs all the time through, the mountains in California. So, like, going out, I love those hikes, and I loved hiking, everything we did that first day. That was like up my wheelhouse. Like, I threw that pack on. I'm like, let's go, motherfucker. And you had these people from New York City that are like, what is this? I'm getting eaten alive. I'm hitting all these bugs. Like, this is terrible. This is brutal. Fuck this. I'm out. And like, so yeah, there was definitely some parts in it that the military definitely helped me with, but there's other parts of it that there ain't much that's going to help. I mean, I don't give a damn who you are, and I don't give a damn what you do for a workout. There's nothing that will prepare you for a 7-mile barbed wire crawl.
So, okay, so let's go back to that lady, because I saw her on the social media, and I was going to ask you about her, and I'm glad you kind of brought her up already. But there was something interesting that I saw when I was following the race on social media, and then you actually said something about it on Friday, which is when I was looking at the group of people, especially when they were showing you guys doing the burpees, and I think there was a scene of you guys going in the water with the sandbags, and I was looking at the group of people, and I was like, how do I say this without sounding judgmental? I don't mean it the way it's going to sound, but there were people that I was like, shit, that guy's doing it. If he can do it, I can do it. And then I saw that lady that I guess based off of her hair color, I'm like, she's got to be at least in her 50s. And I'm like, that's fucking impressive. Did you say she had a prosthetic too? You froze up on me. You there?
Yeah, she does.
Okay, yeah. So that even makes it even more amazing. But like, you said something to me on Friday that I would love for you to hit on, which is it doesn't matter. Talk about you know what I'm gonna say. I don't want to say it for you. You go.
I'm trying to remember.
Well, like, okay, so you were saying something like it doesn't really matter what you look like. It's more about your mental fitness than it is your physical fitness. And I think when I see that lady and I saw some of the guys that I saw in the group, not that they looked out of shape, but when you think of something like this, I think of somebody that looks like you or looks like the people I'm used to seeing at the Spartan races that are in the competitive and elite groups. And then I see people that just look like average, ordinary people that aren't necessarily not fit, but they're not exactly like, they don't look like Spartan endurance athletes. You know what I mean?
So the thing about the endurance side of Spartan is that you learn really quick. Oh, crap. I got 10% battery left. All right. You learn really quick with Spartan endurance that the look of somebody means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. I don't give a shit if you're a runner. I don't give a shit if you lift weights. You can be the most buff dude or can run 100 miles. I'll tell you what, if your mental strength isn't there, you ain't going to do it. There was a guy, this was his 5th death race. He has 4 skulls. We got to the burpees, and he was standing next to me. And Joe said, we're doing 3,000 burpees. And he looked at me, and he looked at Joe, took off his bib, and he's like, I'm fucking done. It's everybody has their breaking point. And this dude looks like he could withstand it. Like, he just looks like some backwoods dude that could just roll over anything. And he was just like, fuck this. Took off his bib and was done. So when you look at somebody, you can't look at somebody and be like, they're not strong. Because that person will be the person who mentally is stronger than anybody on this earth. And that's what everything all boils down to is your mental strength. It's not about the size of your muscles. It's not about how far you can run or anything like that. It's the drive and resolve that you have in your mind to go further than you ever thought. So if that means you can do 1 pull-up, it doesn't matter. Do you have the mental strength to try for 2? Or do you drop off that bar and say, fuck it, I'll never get 2? That's the difference between some of the elite racers that you see in like Spartan for the super, the beast, and the sprints. And then when you walk into a hurricane heat or a death race or in a gogi, that is the difference, because the people that you see in that group, you're like, if he's doing it, I can do it. And that'll be the motherfucker that outlasts you because they are stronger mentally than you ever were.
Dude, that was a powerful thing when you said that on Friday, because I was like it just, in some ways it motivates me I immediately started flashing back to some of the races I've already done, because this is the first year I've ran in the competitive and the age group. And there are times when I'm in the age group that I'm like on the super, for example, which is not an enormous amount of distance, especially compared to what the fuck you just did. I mean, it was like 8 miles. It was nothing. I mean, you guys did that in 10 times over. But it was like I started going back and revisiting and reevaluating things the way I had raced in the past mentally, more so than physically, and realized that it wasn't maybe so much my endurance or lack of endurance that was keeping me from doing better in the races, but it was my mental endurance that was keeping me from – because I hate the bucket carry. I will tell you, the bucket carry on every Spartan race is my absolute – worst. It's a mental thing for me. It could be a flat bucket carry. It could be go 100 yards and back. It could be go 10 feet back. And I'm like, I fucking hate it. So that's why I went and bought a bucket and filled it up with 60 pounds or 70 pounds or whatever it is of rocks. And that's why at least 3 or 4 times a week I fucking carry it up and down my street, up hills, because I'm like, when I go to Asheville, when I do this ultra, when I do every other race I've got this year, I want to be like, yeah, this feels like at home. No big deal. I want my mental strength to be like, fuck it, we do this every week. Who cares? So yeah, no, we can wrap this up. I know I've kept you for a while, but like I liked what you said about the pull-ups, and that's why, like I'm saying, the bucket carry. Like that's why I challenge myself to do a bucket carry every week at the house, because I want people to hear what you're saying and challenge themselves to take what they like the least and get better at it by forcing themselves to do what they don't want to do, so that when they have to do it, it's not a big deal. You there?
No, I'm here. Yeah, he froze up a little bit. But no, and I'm not saying that everybody has to be like some crazy masochistic type person about it and totally destroy themselves like what I went through. And, it may escalate from here now, like the more that I reflect on this past race. But what I am saying to people is that take what you don't like, or question what you don't like and why you don't do something. Question it. If you don't want to do a workout, why don't you want to do a workout? If you don't want to apply for a new job, why don't you want to apply for a new job? And if your answer has anything to do with you're scared, then you need to do it. It's that simple. Because fear is what drives us to not do some of the most amazing things in life. And fear will cause us to miss out on the most amazing things in life. So if you don't want to do something, question it. And sometimes that answer is going to be, listen, it's just not going to make me happy. And that's fine. But just make sure that then that's the right answer. Don't say that I don't want to do the bucket carry. Why don't you want to do the bucket carry? Well, it sucks. Well, suck it the fuck up, Buttercup, and go do it. Like, shut up and do it. Now, if you were like, I don't want to do Tough Mudder because I personally just don't want to get electrocuted. All right, that's a pretty legit statement. So, all right, I agree with that. But it's one of those things that it's really question why you don't want to do something. And sometimes the answer that you'll find, you'll answer it yourself and you'll just say, I don't want to do it because I'm scared. Well, we were all scared of the dark at one point in our life, and then you grow up. So it's at what point you have to ask yourself when you're going to grow up. You're still muted.
Yeah. Sorry. I love what you're saying, because it's like, I love how Sean says that fear is false evidence appearing real. And it's like, that's exactly like you summed it up. Like, that was perfect. It's like we mentally fear things sometimes for reasons that appear real when they're really not. And like, there's no reason for me to be nervous or afraid of the bucket. And afraid's not the right word. I just fucking hate it. But there's no reason for me to really hate it, because it's just a matter of me getting over it mentally and going, okay, this bucket's not going to beat me. Like, this is a fucking bucket of rocks. Why am I letting a bucket of rocks have that much power over me? And why am I dreading it in a race? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's so ridiculous. And like, there have been times where I'll be racing and I'm like, as soon as I get to the bucket carry, I'm good. And if it's the halfway point, then that point on is gravy. But it's like I spend so much stupid energy thinking about the bucket carry and what it's going to be like and where it's going to be and how far it's going to be and, you know, all that bullshit. And it's like, why? Like, why? Just do it. Like you said, just suck it up and do it. And I like what you said about the, you know, applying for it. It applies to everything in life and getting uncomfortable to get comfortable and that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Dude, I can't thank you enough for like sharing this stuff with us, because like for those that don't know, I'll close with this. Like, again, I said this in the beginning and I'll say it now at the end. I'm so glad that we got to know you. For those that don't know, you're running the world's toughest mudder in Atlanta in the late fall. And you asked Alicia and I to be, you and Amber both are doing it, and you asked us to be part of your pit crew, which I'm excited about. And like I told you Friday, now I'm sure I'll have more by then. But now I have a lot of cool shit I can throw at you to help keep you motivated. But it's like, I cannot wait to be a part of that and watch you succeed and get that 75-mile bib. And for those that don't know, you sent me a text that meant more to me than probably anything you've ever said, which was you sent me a text when you knew I signed up for my first ultra, and you said, I was there for your first Spartan race. I was there for your first trifecta. By God, I'm going to be there for your first ultra, which happens to be 7 days after you do 75 miles on the world's toughest mudder in Atlanta. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, I'm like, dude, like, I got goosebumps when I read that. And for y'all that can't see, there's a bracelet that I wear that says never quit, that he gave me, that never leaves my arm. And the other one is from Sean. So like, you two are the people that get me through my everything that I do, my training. And so I hope that people watch this, get and find the motivation from you that I get. And I hope they take what it is that I feel like just by listening to you, whether we do what you do or not, you clear a path for us to follow, whatever that path is in our lives. It's the same path. It just might be a different destination. For you, it's endurance races. For us, it could be an ultra or hurricane heat, a new job, anything. But it's the same principles that you teach us through what you do when you're racing that we can apply in all areas of our lives. So I hope people got that and understood that, because I surely do as your friend. So.
Yeah, it's totally awesome. I mean, I love seeing where you started and what you've made of it. I mean, the thing that I always tell everybody is that everybody takes something different from these races, but it's not even racing in general. It's just in what you love and what that passion you find, and everybody takes something different. I took it on this endurance side of it more so than anything. And I mean, hell, you made this badass fucking adult jungle gym in your backyard, which is totally awesome. And like the group of people that you have brought together, like, is just amazing. And the fact that you and Alicia just keep continuously pushing yourselves, you know, beyond the point that you ever thought you could is like beyond awesome. I mean, the fact that you're doing an ultra, like the beginning of the, even like, think about the beginning of the year, you were like, I'm going to do, what was it? 3 trifectas. And that turned into 5. And then all of a sudden, ultra. And it's like, holy shit. Now just be careful, because now it's going to be like, oh, what's next? And it could be a vicious cycle. And they're doing 3,000 burpees in a death rate. But
dude, I've already thought about it. Like there were people over here working out with us on Saturday, and I was already thinking about next year. And I'm like, I want to dip my toe in a hurricane heat. Like, I don't, like, as of today, I have zero fucking interest in doing a death race. I love watching you. I will be your biggest fucking cheerleader. I don't know that I had the mental toughness to do a death race. What I will tell you is I will entertain doing a hurricane heat, and I will probably do one next year. And I want to go out next year. I want to go to the UK and do I want to do a Spartan overseas. I want to go do one in Scotland or somewhere in the UK. And because there's a lot of people that we know, you and I both know some people over there in the UK, and like to be able to go over there and race with Andy and Richard and some of those guys would be amazing. Like that to me is that's where I want to take it next year. And like I think they even do one in Australia, which I don't think I'm going to Australia anytime soon. But like that's on my bucket list. I want to fucking do a Spartan race in Australia.
Yep.
So,
And then maybe you're going to do the trifecta weekend this year. Maybe we'll do the trifecta weekend next year.
What's the trifecta?
You do a 12-hour hurricane heat Friday into Saturday, the ultra Saturday, and then the 8-hour hurricane heat Saturday night.
Whoa. Yeah, we'll put a pin in that. We'll circle back to that. Oh, shit. I can't even. Oh. Okay. Now you just made my stomach turn. Oh, shit. Well, dude, thank you so much, man, for getting on. And I appreciate your time. And I can't wait to get this out and for everybody to see it. And everybody, and I'll put it on the screen when we post it. But if for those that are looking for Jason, it's at VT Backwoods Fitness.
On Instagram, yeah.
Okay, on Instagram. And Instagram, is that mainly where they should follow you, or do you do anything on Facebook that people would follow?
The thing I do on Facebook is I just post the same stuff I do on Instagram, but I'm more active on my stories on Instagram.
All right, so at VT Backwoods Fitness, and I'll make sure I post it on here when we get it out there.
Cool.
All right, dude. Thanks, man. I hope you have a great night, and I know I'll be talking to you this week.
All right, man.
All right, brother. See ya.